In cities built on steel and concrete, millions of bees were quietly released. No fanfare, no headlines, just a radical experiment unfolding in plain sight. 7 years later, these skylines don't just look different. They pulse with wildflowers, cooler air, and life science once warned was vanishing forever. It wasn't a miracle. It was the secret comeback of nature's smallest workforce, transforming food chains and city living in ways few saw coming. But how did a hidden wave of urban beekeeping spark this unreal change? And what does it reveal about the future of our cities? The answer starts with a crisis that threatened the world's food supply. Across continents, a quiet emergency took hold. Bees, once so abundant they seemed woven into the background of everyday life, began to vanish. Fields that once thrummed with pollinators grew silent. Scientists traced the decline to a tangled web of causes: relentless pesticide use, shrinking wild spaces, monoculture farming, and the spread of concrete. According to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, more than 40% of invertebrate pollinator species, especially bees and butterflies, now face extinction. In Europe alone, nearly 37% of wild bee populations are in decline. The consequences reach far beyond honey or wildflowers. 3 out of every 4 food crops grown worldwide depend, at least in part, on animal pollination. That's fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, foods that anchor diets and economies. The global value of these pollination services sits somewhere between $235 and $577 billion each year. Without pollinators, harvests shrink and food prices rise. In some regions, entire crops risk collapse. The problem isn't distant or abstract. It's a chain reaction, set in motion by human choices, that threatens the foundation of food security everywhere. The warning signs were clear, but the solutions would require thinking differently, especially in the places where nature seemed to have been pushed out for good. In the heart of New York, a soft buzz began to rise above the city's constant hum. After 2010, rooftop beekeepers quietly hauled wooden boxes up ladders and fire escapes, tucking hives between air conditioners and water tanks. The city's ban on beekeeping had just been lifted. Within months, clusters of honeybees found new homes atop brownstones, museums, and community gardens. On a Brooklyn rooftop, a solitary figure in a white suit lifted a frame heavy with honey, watching as bees traced lazy circles in the warm air. Paris moved with its own rhythm. More than 1,000 hives now crown the city's rooftops, from the Opéra Garnier to schools and hotels. Here, beekeeping is woven into daily life, part tradition, part quiet rebellion against the loss of nature. In London, a network of green patches and wildflower strips began to stitch the city together. These pollinator corridors, stretching across neighborhoods and along rail lines, offered safe passage for bees and butterflies. Meanwhile, in Dubai, beekeepers experimented with desert-adapted hives, coaxing colonies to thrive even as summer temperatures soared near 50 degrees Celsius. None of these projects began with fanfare. Instead, the first hives appeared almost unnoticed, small acts of restoration, seated on rooftops and in hidden corners. Over time, their presence became impossible to ignore. Satellite images began to tell a new story. Spaces once mapped as concrete and tar now pulsed with green, rooftops, vacant lots, and city parks stitched together by corridors of wildflowers. Over 7 years, NDVY readings revealed an 18% increase in urban greenness, a surge that showed up not just in gardens, but across entire neighborhoods. The city's surface temperature maps shifted too. On the hottest days, some rooftops measured 7 degrees cooler than before. This wasn't just a matter of shade. Meadows replaced gravel and pollinator gardens flourished where nothing had grown for decades. In some districts, the number of flowering plants tripled, and the air felt lighter, fresher, easier to breathe. What started as scattered patches of green became a living network, visible from space, proof that the city itself was changing, not by accident, but by design. The hard edges of the metropolis softened, and pockets of nature multiplied in places no one expected. Urban ecologists studying city bee populations noticed a pattern. In Vancouver, after just a few years of coordinated planting and pollinator support, species richness rose by 45%. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about resilience. Genetic tracing revealed diverse colonies thriving where monocultures once failed. The secret, experts say, lies in the feedback loop. More flowers attract more bees, and more bees mean more successful plants. Over time, this cycle builds momentum, pulling other species into the fold and stabilizing the ecosystem. Planners in Ljubljana drew inspiration from this science, launching the Bee Path in 2015. They mapped a network of hives and pollinator gardens across the city, linking schools, businesses, and public spaces. Singapore took the idea further, embedding pollinator corridors into its city and nature plan. Here, biodiversity isn't an afterthought. It's coded into the city's DNA. Each model proves that when cities design for life, the benefits ripple outward, touching both nature and people. 7 years after New York City legalized beekeeping in 2010, reports documented more than 1,000 hives across Paris rooftops, a 22-kilometer pollinator corridor in London, and bee colonies thriving in Dubai's desert climate. Satellite data confirms an 18% increase in urban greenness and temperature drops of up to 7 degrees Celsius on green roofs. These changes are directly linked to targeted ecological planning, as noted in FAO and UNEP reports. Yet, some questions remain. Scientists continue to study whether managed honeybee populations compete with native pollinators, and long-term effects are still being measured. What is clear is that cities which once pushed nature out are now proving that even small interventions can drive measurable recovery. The evidence shows that urban beekeeping and thoughtful design are not just experiments. They are shaping new urban ecosystems. The return of bees, documented in planning files and ecological surveys, stands as proof. With intention and care, cities can become living environments once more.